Welcome to the Influencer Show with your host, Trishawn Ben Salmi.
Hey everyone, it's Trishawn, and today I am going to be interviewing Dr. Meagan Fettes. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to your listeners and let them know a little bit about you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Trishawn, for having me on here. So excited. And so my name is Meagan Fettes. I'm one of the thought leaders that's featured in the film How Thoughts Become Things. And what I do is basically I help people to understand the workings of our minds so that we can shift our life, our business, and really start to create and actively co-create the life that we really want versus falling into the patterns and the ways of being that we don't really love.
That is absolutely amazing. Could you share with the listeners, because you said that you're part of the movie, what was the biggest takeaway from being a part of that movie?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. Like, I was actually just talking to Douglas this morning about this, how this is still a little bit of a surreal experience. The biggest thing to me is that's been interesting. So actually, funny story, when I came out of filming, I sat down and we were talking about what we had filmed, and I was like, oh man, I didn't talk about this, and I didn't talk about that, and I didn't talk about this. And Doug said, don't worry about that because you are so used to saying these things. Like, this is something that's so familiar to you. And what was kind of neat about that, and something I always want to share, is no matter what level we are in this personal development space, no matter where we have found ourselves or how much we have taught, we still have those inner things that come up that make us feel like maybe we're not doing enough or we're showing up enough. So my biggest takeaway was just acknowledging that piece. Of course, there's so many. Like, the film and being a part of the film is such a blessing and an honor that I can't even begin to describe it in words.
That's absolutely amazing. And you kind of like answered the second question really, because I was going to ask, like, what was, like, if you could go back in time, what would you say? What would you say or add? Anything that you like missed out on, really?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, and like I said, because I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface, and there's so much more depth that I would love to share with people, and a lot of that goes back into understanding how our minds are really created, where our thoughts are really developed from, because everything that we experience is from our experience as a child or even as a teenager. Like, I love to share that our brains are the most malleable between the ages of like 4 to 17. And which is amazing because we have so much opportunity to learn and grow and shift and change during those times. But then understanding that as we become an adult, what happens to our minds is understanding that there's actually 3 egos. There's 3 minds that we want to be able to understand and tap into. There's I call it our me mind, where we're focused on ourselves. And then there's the I mind, where we kind of disconnect from everything. And then there is the we mind, which is the true connection of the all 3.
That is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I really do agree with that, because like people are not able, because like when it comes to like learning or just like building up a business or setting up something new to you, it's about being open to then go down different avenues to then maximize your results, really.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say, why would you say this movie is needed now more than ever?
Well, and it came at a perfect time. Like, when we think about what's going on a global scale, right? We're being shown, and I keep saying this with this current global pandemic that we're experiencing, is we're being shown really where our fears are still residing or where our trust is. And so this film is perfect because those that are really kind of diving into the more of the pandemic of fear. I don't even want to say the pandemic of a virus, because what we're seeing is the fear mindset that's taking over more than anything. And so this is that great opportunity for us to really understand through this movie how our thoughts affect our life. Like, we manifest everything but are we manifesting what we really want through intention, or are we manifesting just out of, I don't want to say laziness, but out of like old programming?
Yeah, and I really did like about like how in the movie, I really did like about like how in the movie you spoke about relationships and breaking away from toxic relationships. Could you maybe share a little bit more, but not too in depth, so that they can watch the movie?
Yeah, totally. And really, we're always in relationship, right? Like, that's my big belief. We're in relationship with people, we're in relationship with ourselves, we're in a relationship with everything. And ultimately, everything that we are in relationship is, again, showing us what we need to either let go of or what we need to step into. And it's ultimately when we have those reactions, it's not because of the thing or the person or anything. It actually has to do with ourselves. And the more that we can lean in and tap into what's going on internally, then we can actually shift the experience externally.
That's very very interesting. I really do agree with that, because like when like we're all the way up the saying like hurt people and things like that. So that is absolutely amazing. Um, in the so in the movie, once again, you shared a lot about like relationships and other things like that. What would you say are like biggest like the biggest mistakes people often make when getting into a relationship?
Hmm. Well, and it kind of goes back to those three minds, because we often think that, I will use the I mind kind of as an example, Trishan. So when we go into relationships, usually there's this expectation that somebody's going to show up in this certain way, the way that we want or the way that we desire. And what happens, however, is we'll paint a picture or create a story. That's maybe a better way to put it. We'll write a story about how this person's going to show up and who they are and the role that they play in our lives. And almost like we create this projection of expectation. And what happens then is all of a sudden that person is kind of either bound into that expectation, or they come out of it and we react to that. So instead, we want to kind of come back to what is it within ourselves that we're expecting from that other person, and how are we showing up with that? So for example, I love this example. A lot of times in relationships, people talk about support, right? And I mean, I used to do this to my husband, so I'll even use myself as a prime example. I used to, back in the day when we first started dating, I would say, like, I need you to support me. I need you to support me. And that really was me speaking to myself. How do I need to support myself? Because people aren't meant to do anything for us. They're just meant to show us what we need for ourselves. And the more that we can acknowledge that, then all of a sudden we actually embrace this amazing relationship, both with ourselves and with those other people.
That's amazing, and actually reminded me of something, how people often talk about like when you're talking to people, it's about listening not only to what they're saying, but the things that they're not saying, because then you pick up on the things that they actually like really want. Because like someone could be like complaining about all these other things, but it's about then going under the surface to see like the root cause and the root problem of their suffering as a whole, really.
Yes. And people always tell us what they need. They might not be aware of it, because often people are unconsciously speaking or unintentionally sharing. So I love that. I always say it's like listening on different levels or on multiple levels.
That is absolutely amazing. What would you say was the pivotal point for you when you realized what you really wanted to do?
You know, that's a great question, Trayshawn. I remember, so in my journey, I have shared this a lot. So in my past, I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I woke up one day and I made the decision that I knew I needed to change my life. I didn't feel like there was any other choice that I had. And when I made that decision, and it wasn't an easy one, when I made that decision, all of a sudden my path had opened up and I took my first yoga teacher training. And in that training, I had no desire to teach yoga. And that's really what kind of shifted and pivoted my life. But I went into it and it changed my life, and it made me really look at who I was, how I was showing up, the choices I was making, the excuses I was creating. And it really like shone a light on myself. And through that course of that training, there was this like deep calling within my soul that I needed to share this. And that would be that pivotal moment, because I started to share it. I started to teach, and all of a sudden it was like, you know what? There was just a knowing. I don't know how else to put it. There was just a knowing within myself that this was the path I was meant to be on. I'm sure you've had that, because I love the smile that you've got on your face right now.
Definitely. I totally understand like that aha moment when you realize that this is what you need to do, and it's just like all of a sudden like everything that clicks into place really.
Yeah.
What motivates you to then share your message with others?
I'm a big believer that everybody is full, absolutely, like to the brim with potential. And what happens is like our eyes, through our process of growing up, through experiences that we have, we no longer can see that as human beings. We can't see it in ourselves, but often we can see it in other people. And so that's what inspires me, is to help people be able to see that true potential, that true light that shines within themselves. Because I'm a big believer that we're all one soul, we're all connected. And if we can do the work to help each other see how incredible we are and turn those lights on, then we're actually doing a favor, not just to them, but to everybody. And so that's what truly inspires me in that.
That is absolutely amazing. And I hope that you listeners have gained some information and some useful tips from this interview that you guys can then use to take actionable steps towards better control over your lives as a whole, really. And I'd like to thank you for allowing me to interview you today.
Well, thank you so much, Trayshawn. Like, this has been absolutely incredible. And I'm so excited to follow you and what you're doing in your journey, because by the sounds of it, you are on this incredible path.
Thank you so much. And could you share with the listeners where they can find you if they'd like to find out about any upcoming things you may have?
Absolutely. So Facebook is always best. I'm on there as Meagan Fettes, Rise Entrepreneur Center, or Instagram under the Rise Entrepreneur Center, as well as my Facebook, or not my Facebook, my website, which is meaganfettes.com.
Thank you so much. And I really do urge that you listeners go and check out Meagan Fettes. It's absolutely amazing. And thank you so much to you listeners for tuning into the interview today. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it. That's it from me. Bye.